Well, I mean, I think we met, is it now 2 years since we met? I think it was
Yeah.
at the Consumer Goods and Tech event in New York at the Roosevelt. I mean, it's about 2 years, I think, June, roughly. And I mean, in that time, I've still been very actively involved in revenue growth management and also data science, which I believe you've now um, sort of moved back to. I think that's where you came from, is that right? Which is a really interesting overlap.
Yeah, the whole reason the curiosity came from a project which is revenue management based on the predictive analytics side. So after I kind of semi-finished the project, it just kind of came to a realization I wanted to learn more, right? Have been struggling with what degree to go after as a master. Do I go back to MBA? Have been with a company well established at this point in my career. So this seems to be a really kind of focused niche that I had a bit exposure to, and also a lot cheaper, just to be
Yeah,
quite honest,
yeah, yeah.
Uh, the Northwestern Killock is three times more. I don't want to be in debt.
Yeah.
I'm too old for that. So started looking into it. It just had a lot of, good blend of leadership and data analytics component and hands-on coding. So has been really rewarding. Right now I'm moving into a implementation project role. So we are gutting out the entire Oracle-based solution, basically,
Oh, interesting.
um,
Wow.
and moving into S4. So the S4 is fairly powerful in terms of more on their, real-time analytics and so on. So we're building like the foundation.
And I really enjoyed speaking to you at New York, and I think part of the reason why I wanted to chat to you again is, I mean, Hustle and Flow is a passion project, and that's been incubated whilst working on a lot of these either strategy consulting or startup or some of these tech implementation roles, as we've just touched on. And for me, the passion there and the vision was really around, and I've got to carefully word this, but big business and global implementation projects, be it startups or any businesses of scale,
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes overlook the human-centered innovation, the human elements that
Mm-hmm.
underpin ways of working that are nimble, lean, entrepreneurial, perhaps quick, adaptive,
Mm-hmm.
um, in ways that agile was once before it became a bit bastardized, which it's kind of lost. Maybe that's not fair because agile is awesome, but it's kind of lost some of that, ground team startup feel. And we always, and I think this is what we spoke about in that user group that we were a part of together in one of the rooms, was around ways of working, and
Mm-hmm.
particularly the revenue growth management teams within consumer goods businesses being sort of a nucleus of
Mm-hmm.
strategic planning, finance, data, sort of all the data in the organization gets in a way recycled. It's the hopper of intelligence, but also the sort of it's where the strategic, the SWAT team resides in the business. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of adaptability. It's almost like a small startup founder team at RGM,
Mm-hmm.
particularly with data analytics coming in, and
Right.
responsiveness is key on the back of that in terms of decision making. So for me, there was always we've presented at global level some of these agility at scale, and how do you build that as business models? How do you build teams that are inspired, thriving with culture, purpose, etc. But the beginning of my career, I was always passionate about what does that look like in an individual.
That's very interesting, right? People make up everything, right? People drives culture,
Yeah,
uh, and people can drive that energy in terms of getting things done. But then, the same token, using S4 project, you feel like you're moving mules that they're just so used to doing what they do on a daily basis. They're content, but they don't care, nor they wanted to participate as a part of the the future. And I remember someone was a mentor early on in my career. She said to me, "You need both, right? You need the innovators to drive the vision, but you also need people that they can get things done. They may not give you beyond 9 to 5, but they're comfortable. So in those roles, I think you need to clearly define that. And I think as organizations grow, especially with pandemic, you realize there are so many things can be automated. Does that dynamic now change? Was it used to be 50-50, 60-40? Of course, that all depends on the industry. But I think you getting to the point of a 2080 a component really quickly, right? If I, and then using AI, machine learning, if I have somebody doing invoicing to pay the customer, to call the customer, to place an order, that could all be automated. But what does that mean to these population, to these people? I think that's where that training education comes.
I love that. And can we explore that more? So,
sure.
We're at this cliff edge now of millions of people overnight being laid off. And in some cases, I mean, the unlucky ones didn't make it through COVID, but aside from that, the other ones have lost roles as you started. They're all being displaced right now. And I guess there comes a responsibility. A part of this process is also about saying, okay, we can cut costs, we can automate, we can fix, but what do we do to redirect purpose and mission? Right. So, and I'd love to, please carry on.
Well, of course, just from my thinking, I think you first need to understand what is their motivator, right? What drives people? And that's different. For me, it could be very different from the next person. You have to really understand that and understand it from the trust component. You can drive change through fear, but it's not going to stick for a long time and sustainable. But if you can drive change through motivation, through appreciation, and truly understand through a trust component, then they realize you're changing them for the benefit of themselves. I cannot say 100% that always work for individuals who are in that situation, but there's a lot of different tactics when it comes to change management, I feel like. So you either on the bus or not on the bus, and the bus is moving, right? That's, to me, it's kind of a fear tactic, but then you kind of have to drive the value component to them, how they can be a part of the participation, and what does that mean for them to participate. I don't believe anyone wants to work at a job that they don't feel like they're driving value. So that value proposition should be talked about, should be discussed, and should be customized almost to individuals in those roles. And then having the training set up with these folks, and to say, okay, I will hate to say if somebody doing something for 20 years, they will not say, well, that's something else is interesting. I just never had the time to explore because I'm stuck doing 80% of the manual work. I don't have the time. So that then become the driver to say, if I can reduce your manual work, not that you are not needed, but your expertise, you will lend a fresh lens into somebody else's role that you have found interest. Can you connect? Can you collaborate with someone, right? To be learning a new skill set, or even challenge somebody else to work a little bit better. Mm-hmm. So those then become, a mentor relationship, training opportunity, education opportunity within the organization. So now that's a small part of the people component, but then that also require that understanding and commitment at the highest level, right? Me as a director, if I'm managing 5 or 6 people, I may change the landscape in my own little bubble, but if that is not being committed from an HR side, from the leadership side, that they don't understand the retention of your current workforce is ultimately the best for you because it's the most cost effective, then they may not understand what that means and to drive that forward. So it's kind of a couple of components, right? You go from the bottom up, but then you ultimately have to drive from the top down.
What if I were to take a slightly less pragmatic rather? Mm-hmm. Let's take it outside of our consumer goods world and maybe look at, I don't know, a policy level. Mm-hmm. Now, what do we say and how do we reinforce a future message? How do people now need to think around automation, data analytics, as if it's not a threat, because many people have overnight, you know, starting to say things like technocracy, I don't even know how you say the word, technocracy, or the technocrats are taking over, and the data analytics have really displaced us. There's no more roles for us. I mean, where do we go with that? Yeah, you know, who's looking after, who's catching that? So, you know, with a view to the CEO of Constellation Brands, whoever, Unilever, any of the big companies, I mean, they're looking after their people. But where's the catch, the sliver of people that have dropped off in the layoffs in companies? And, you know, how do we think about that going forward? Just, you know, of course, from a personal perspective, I'd really be interested to hear your view where automation has now displaced human roles. What might we do to empower humans more going forward?
Well, I mean, from my personal academic experience, I can say for a fact, you can't replace human. You always need that human intelligence. And a lot of time, if you follow your gut feeling, and I read this pretty, you know, lengthy article about gut check, you know, there's a whole theory around that. Most of the time you're right? In a situation, in a crisis mode, the human has that ability to say, with all the information here, I cannot run a model or program or the data, but my instinct tell me this is the path forward.
Absolutely.
And a lot of time it's right.
Yeah.
So especially in the world of data science, you know, we can say, oh, let's build this neural network and do all of these things, but you still need that human intelligence to guide, to refine, to create a parameter, right? If the modeling only can capture the pattern, but sometimes we know our data pattern can be biased. So if a computer intelligence is learning our biased data point, they will create biased decision, right? You've seen some of those play out in Amazon hiring process and targeting consumer and all of that. So from an education perspective or even policy, let's talk about from a social level. I think school, elementary school, I mean, our kids is very much lagged behind on the amount of exposure that they can have around that, right? And it's different. It depends on what school. If it's a private school, they may have more exposure around that. But understanding the capability of computer language is really much needed. That should really be ingrained in early on with education for kids, I really believe.
Absolutely. I mean, what education do you mean? Are you talking about how to manage your interactions through digital structures and networks, or, I mean, out of interest, what are we thinking?
It's a very simple, it's just a very simple computer programming.
Yeah.
You know,
write
this piece of code and, you know, A and then B, you know, and my son, actually, I just noticed this past year, they started to explore that. He has I don't know exactly the software programming, but he said, do these repeatedly, and then you will see this little human start drawing the circle on the right? So you repeat that. But that should be beyond that, right? What can computer do? Yeah. And what's the data can help us? Because my biggest struggle is there's so much information in our fingertip. We're almost slaves to information sometimes.
Too much of it. How do we distill?
Right. It's too much of it. Yeah. And we need to somehow using a technology to guide us in that regards. And I just listened to this conference on AI from the architectural lead in Google. And he talked about how they use data to change very basic people day-to-day responsibilities to make your life easier. One is very simple is, you know, people have problem. They say, well, my computer doesn't work. My IM is broken. My something is not working. So they are dealing at Google, you know, that scale. They're dealing with millions of tickets from employees. So they have developed a model to say, okay, we have all of these people sending us information. We use text analytics. They break down their each individual keyword to say, do I see a pattern? And do I see pattern in the past, historically, based on information? And how did we solve it and successfully solving that? Then let me grab these answers, likely should support them. And not only that, let me grab these information to the support technician so they don't have to repeat themselves doing simple things.
Yeah, in the handles. Yeah.
And another thing I constantly struggle with, it's just a simple like, oh, I need to email Andrew and 10 other people on this project. Guess what? You probably had to go to IT, create a little list of people that I need to, like an email list. They are able to do that. They can find pattern to say, hey, these are the people that work really closely. Yeah. If you send this email, let me recommend these are the 9 people you need to send. Oh, let's also use that for workplace space maximization. If you work so close all together, but you're in HR, I mean, like, I don't know, benefits, compensation, or I'm a salesperson, but we work really close together. So our organization structure, there's no reasoning behind why we need to work close, but we do. They can put these 2 people together next to each other to maximize their, output. So those are very simple things, right? To have human in mind, design these things,
using
and to drive.
Yeah, sorry. So using machine classification techniques,
yeah.
They're able to then map us, I guess, based on the texts and the functional overlaps in our roles.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So I mean, just Constellation Brands, for instance, and tell me if you can't go into, I'm happy if there's areas you don't want to discuss, but I'll keep this very top level. In what ways have you adapted in the business since COVID? I mean, for one, are you working, I don't know where your geography, what your rules are, and it varies. So are you in the office? So tell us perhaps about your landscape and what the company's done to adapt.
Yeah. So for my work, everybody is working from home. It's definitely challenging, especially implementing an S4 project. Nobody's traveling since March. So you use a lot of Zoom, you use a lot of Microsoft Team, right? So definitely that digital collaboration become a very important element into your day-to-day. So we definitely noticed the focus area. You almost get kicked into, well, you need to figure out e-commerce better than what you're doing like 2 days ago. So there has been a lot of investment around e-commerce. And I actually just talked to someone on the e-commerce team, and she told me they have been given a budget to purchase keywords on the Instacart. Mm-hmm. So, and those are not the keywords like wine, beer. It could be like pizza. It could be like, just random food item that based on Instacart trend, they said these are the words people constantly search, peanut butter jelly, whatever. So then you bid for the slot for your product to show up right next to that keyword. Right. So, and then if a consumer click on it, then you will know, oh, okay, you had to pay for that click. But her challenge is, just because I add it to my cart, that doesn't mean I'm purchasing it right away, right? People build their shopping carts over time. It could be 2 days. It could be, a little bit later. How do you drive and truly understand your conversion for the cost that you purchase per customer? Yeah. So that's a challenge, and that's an area that they try to get caught up on because of the COVID-19. Another is the direct-to-consumer purchase from our website, right?
Direct-to-consumer? I haven't heard that term in at least an hour. It's the buzzword of the last 5 years, right?
Yeah, so they're, I think they just launched the website for High West, which I don't drink High West whiskey. I believe it's a whiskey.
So tell us more about your brands, the Constellation Brands, the biggies. I mean,
sure. The big ones: Corona, Modelo, Svedka. High West is a pretty premium. We have Tequila. The wine portfolio, right? I don't know. Prisoner?
No.
Oh, you got to look at
wine brand, really?
Yeah, prisoner. It's a really cool brand. It's not like a Robert Mondavi. Obviously, it's very like traditional, but prisoner, they're just more edgy in terms of their graphic design. Really cool. And Miomi, Miomi, Franciscan. So
These are mostly Californian wines, US.
yes, they're mostly in California. And then we have Kim Crawford. We have some Ruffino, right? Kim Crawford, New Zealand. That area, small business footprint. So
And
right
you're
now, our company,
based in New Jersey, is that right?
no, our headquarters is in Rochester, New York.
New York, okay. And
Yeah,
you're based in New York.
Chicago.
Chicago, that's right. That was the time difference.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
out of interest, so we're talking about some of the business model changes, particularly through COVID, and any plans going forward, particularly in your team. What does it look like in terms of you? How do you meet with the team? How do you do your what does it look like in 3-4 months' time? I mean, have people been furloughed? What's the story?
Um,
Are you all planning
Very
together?
lucky. I don't believe our company has furloughed anyone, including even the operation side, like people who are making the beer. So,
Good.
um, so they have all been paid till end of June. So there's no furlough plan, and I think in Chicago, a lot of the business has opened. So I think it will be fully open June the 15th. So the people can go back to work. But our company is like, we're just effective working from home than to be in the office. So I think the most interesting thing I would expect to see is this corporation really still need physical space,
Huh.
right? Could that footprint be smaller? I mean, that's the easiest ways to say, hey, I don't need to sign a lease for 5 floors. I just need 3, right? A co-op may work, but we don't need, we work. We can have this co-op situation. We can figure it out ourselves, right? To have that open, collaborative space that.
Absolutely. Yeah. But what about consumers, though? So here's an interesting point for you raise is the corporations might not need it. We don't need all the business space, but I'm coming from a point that's
Mhm.
around consumers need each
Sure.
other to connect. And I guess, my background as such is also very much around the community-based marketplace
Mhm.
and being able to talk to the traders. And I guess we were there 20 years ago in retail. We've moved away. Where do you think this might go in the future? Do you think there'll be less nodes on the high street? Or, as you say, maybe in high footfall locations and perhaps more interacting elsewhere? I mean, what's the vision? What's your thought? Not that
Oh
there is a
boy.
crystal ball, I know that, but where do you
Yeah.
think it might go?
Yeah. I
Because
don't know
you're
how
someone who
thought
works
through
very
as much.
closely.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, the human interaction is definitely, I don't think you can augment that. I don't think you can say, well, we don't need that. Let's replace it with something else. I mean, you can see that in kids. You can see the stress and depression rate going up. I don't know. That's because people are also drinking a lot more
Yeah.
in the past 3 or 4 months. I mean, seriously, the
Yep.
sales in alcohol beverage did not go flat. People are drinking more, and the DTC and making pickup much easier. So I think the human element is still needs to be addressed. I don't think it can be augmented, but really focus around that safety component, right? How do you bring that kind of relationship to being a safe space? That's really hard. I actually don't have an answer for that. I haven't thought through as much as you probably have, but I mean, I can see my son is dying to go out and not able to play baseball, and it's just very challenging.
Yeah,
So,
I think so. And for some of us, we've kept busy with chats like these. I'm conscious that there's a certain part. I mean, I was out earlier today on an amazing riverside run, and on the way back, you pick up the odd person who you can see hasn't been out enough, and when they do get out, they're like edgy. And this guy, I mean, I was busy. I was actually over Hammersmith Bridge looking onto the river because it was a beautiful sight, and I was filming a bit of it. And the next thing, I just hear this guy coming towards me, shouting at me, saying, "I'm going to throw you over the bridge. I'm going to throw you over the bridge." And I'm okay, maybe it's not me. And I just kind of carry on past, and he's chatting at me, but he's keeping his little bubble and he's got this hand sanitizer in his hand, and the guy's he's clearly troubled and concerned. And there's every now and then you see people that are slightly, when relative to others, the other people are fairly relaxed. So, but there's the odd. I think the social distancing thing is possibly now at its end, and certainly in some places, London is starting to restrict and lift that. And I think we're looking at, I don't know about normalized operations again, because there's quite a displaced economic marketplace. So that's an interesting one.
Yeah. I feel once everything is done, I hope there's not going to be a peak. Few months later, people will live as if nothing happened.
Yeah,
I think that's just some kind of a human way of coping with trauma. in a sense, is okay. That's done. Moving on. I don't even remember what happened, and life goes on as normal. But there are certain component on that convenience, the digitalization, and even probably getting to be more customized, because all the digital data we could have potentially collected, right, on their shopping patterns and all of that could enrich into a certain extent of the marketing side of who is truly my customer, who is loyal, who I have gained in this process. So that would be a very interesting sets of data to evaluate. But then, there's always two sides of everything, right? Just like, the AI will be the end of the human race. I believe Elon Musk did a whole speech about that. Then customization is something everybody is really chasing after. My marketing analytics professor, he said, my prediction is people will demand standardization. They will feel so burned from knowing your data is being tracked. There's a whole ethical policy component of data privacy. And also they just don't want to be tracked. They don't want to be customized, right? Let me have the power and right to choose. So
that's an interesting
it's really it's a really interesting and multifaceted dynamic. It depends on which side you want to look at.
I mean, I love it, because the other way it could go, so there's a number of ways. I mean, one of them is we think that this is going to be a little blip, and the blip has created enough awareness around the right conversations. And certainly the last week, as hard as it's been, and as difficult as these protests have been for many, they're the right kind of movement right now, I believe. Certainly a month ago, it was looking a little bit shaky. Now it's looking good. We're moving in the right direction. And certainly this doesn't mean that everything's about to change and that we're going to be traveling around in little capsules and flying. And that's not going to suddenly happen. But I do feel that there's been quite a shift in particularly tech innovations, particularly bio space and health has scaled very quickly. And so at the expense perhaps of some other areas which now need to be refocused on getting people out on the street. One wonders what's going to happen with all these big gyms and the Virgin Actives. I don't know if you have them there, but big gym chains where people used to, that's a big impact. These guys are standing still, and one wonders whether that's going to be back in our lives. Do we have a local park where we congregate with the retail element into it, like sort of like instead of software as a service, retail as a service, and I think that's potentially where we might go. But I'm talking too much. I need to ask you some more questions.
No. That's definitely getting, because I did think about gym while we were just talking about it. I don't think the big gym is really going to come back.
Yeah.
And to your point about people and that sense of community, that will thrive, right? That will really be the center of, I think, business need to focus on, a sense of community.
Or digital thriving. So I'm very curious, and maybe multiple. So it's omni, right? And for me, where do we house that again? That community. Where do people come to hug each other again? If that's the end goal.
I'm not a big gym person. I don't think I will get a whole lot of satisfaction to go to the gym to hug everyone. But but I think that, to your point, right? The gym could be a boutique approach to say, let's create community in the gym, right? For example, okay, the big, to say, well, how about mom's group, right? You guys can gather together. There will be 2 hours in the gym hours for this particular group, and you guys group together, talk about that support, to create a sense of community, to talk about what health and fitness really mean to you. Now, you're talking about customization, you're talking about community. You can monetize that digitally too, through using gym as an example. But you can also create something so small of an entity of something big. So I think that should be that entrepreneurial, innovative look to break things down that still still will be there. The gym probably will still be there. Have you seen that video? People were looting, and then this guy got himself into the gym. Everybody's looting, and he was just on the treadmill and running by himself. He's like, I just want to work out.
Great idea. Yeah, hanging on the TRX. Love that.
Right. I think that community sense, giving back, and all of that will really resonate with not only the consumer, but the next generation of consumer, right? Millennials, they love the fact that I do something that I'm making an impact. I do something, I'm donating socks, right? The Bumble, is that Bumble? Yeah, the socks, and giving back to, third world country, giving them jobs. And when people see that small thing that they do has an impact, going all the way back to what we originally said, right? Employee, people in the organization, when they see a small act that has a ripple effect, and you can not only monetize that, highlight it, and build it in such a way that is organic, I think that will truly be the future of any type of business.
Yeah, I love that. So you're not a fan of the gym. How do you keep your rhythm and flow for the week? How do you stay?
I just finished my project last week, so it hasn't been like I have too much time on my hand. But I started meditation. I actually downloaded Calm, and I started doing the meditation.
It's lazy. I know it's not expert, like unassisted. Some people, but I love it. Which ones do you do, and how long?
I do the daily one. I only started a couple of days ago, so it's really funny. I had this. My biggest problem is I can't stop my thought. Like, before you go to bed, especially after a big schoolwork or a long day, you already thinking about the next step. You thinking about the next project. You're scoping out. You're mapping everything. So for me, it's really stopping my thought. And then the next morning, I started my first Calm session. It gives you techniques talking about how to stop your mind from gaining the momentum. So it's very interesting. I think meditation is so much needed. And that's another component when it comes to that healthy balance in human flourishment, is the desire to be evaluated, to create an impact, organically, to understand what you do has an impact to other people, but also give ourselves the time to stop.
Wow.
The society these days, it's not being promoted, right? We're always talking about efficiency, all of that. And that may be the power of AI.
Yep.
Let me give you more time so you don't do anything. In the state of mind of stopping, relax, and reflect will be more powerful to have innovative ideas.
Yeah. Well, that's the superpower, right? Is being able to be present in the moment and focus, I guess, your neural pathways into whatever it is you're doing, either problem solving, creating, or innovating, but it's being present. And I think nowadays, in this constant mindless inattention, where we're being hypnotized with messages of misinformation constantly, the superpower is actually to be able to switch off and not have those thoughts, and to be I'm not necessarily a proponent of meditating to be mindful. I also believe there's a skill and art going for a mindful walk in nature, and sometimes switching off your music, but maybe with music where you can trigger flow, or mindful cooking, or mindful eating. I did my yoga teacher training course a few years ago, and I worked in a yoga studio, and it was kind of a karma membership. So you get some of your yoga for free, and then you come and sweep the floors, and you do some cool stuff, but you also bond with a wonderful community. And it was a very busy London yoga studio. And a lot of people were coming in, doctors, lawyers, sort of people working at the extreme end of stress. So city workers, high propensity for burnout. And so we would meet them and see them as the kind of community connectors and guests coming into. And the biggest theme was sort of people being focused at work, running that hard run from 9 to 6 at the office, but then trying to squeeze in the pre 9 a.m., whatever it is you do. If you're a workout, whatever, all that stuff. And then in the evening, possibly more work. And it's mostly, a lot of it is done through your phone. So the phone creates this brain funk that needs to be defunked. And so what the yoga studio did, and the mindfulness and all of that did, was an hour where someone would put their phones, often not in the room, it would be left outside. And just to have that mat became this little Zen bubble or little space of, okay, I'm now going to spend an hour of just breathe. And I saw the power of that. Many of us, myself included, would go in there zapped up from the London energy and life on a Friday night. And after an hour and a half, you're just, wow, different space entirely. And I think meditation is that, but you can do it through cooking. I don't want to sell or preach the converted. No, it's stress. I mean, you how do you bounce, deal with tricky stuff? What's your go-to in terms of managing the feast and the famines of life?
I think the biggest thing I have learned the last 2 years is that's kind of how I think, is I always plan for the worst scenario so I don't get surprised. Even though I can also be the most optimistic person that you've met, because I'm like, I've planned for the worst mentally in my head.
That's a great skill of the team.
So, in this, whether it's investment, whether it's a big life decision, you just think about the worst, but do I have a solution lined up? I'm a little bit anal around that. But another component I really, really learned and practice is to be grateful. To stop, right? But really count things that you're thankful for. And when you get to that mindset, you completely reset your mind.
Do you do a daily gratitude journal? How do you practice that out of interest?
I usually do that before I go to bed. It's almost like a 5 minutes to say what I'm thankful for today.
Is it in a prayer format, or would you?
No. It's almost just like it's almost like a prayer in your head. I go through all of that, and then I will say 1 or 2 things for people that I have on my mind, that it weighted heavy on my mind, whether it's the protesters, whether somebody that I know going through surgery, somebody struggling, adopting kids, or having, meal on the table. When you think about that, not only count your own blessings, but really think about 2 or 3 people that could have been waiting on your mind, then you kind of change your dynamics. because then nothing is really not that pressing, right? I'm not saving the world here in what I do.
Might be with the gin that you guys are pushing out. You might be.
I'm not solving the world's hunger or the problem, but
Modelo is pretty good.
So then that stress and then become really artificial, right? And I think oftentimes stress is your own rules of that expectation you fail to meet.
Yeah, I'm going to leave you with that last question because I think that was beautiful. Thank you.